Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
We're interviewing Mr. Stone for the Veterans History Project. It's November 27th, 2015, and we're in Syracuse, New York. Mr. Stone, could you state your full name for the record?
Edward W. Stone,
And when were you born?
September the 4th, 1923,
And where were you born?
Towanda, Pennsylvania.
And did your parents immigrate, or were they natural born in the U.S.? Tell us just a little bit about your parents
They were natural born.
and their names.
Joseph S. Stone and Laura A. Weaver.
And what did your dad do for a living? What was his job?
He was a boilermaker for the Lehigh Valley Railroad in Sayre, Pennsylvania, which was 14 miles from Towanda. And he used to ride the work train every morning, come back on the work train to Towanda, and then walk from the station home.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have an automobile in those days. Yeah. But he made $45 a week, and that was pretty good sized money in those days. And 1929, when the Depression hit, he got cut back to 2 days a week. And I think that my father felt that he was going to have difficulty trying to take care of his family. I have a brother 4 years older than me and my mother. And prior to World War I, he worked in the silent movie industry as a stagehand, and he also traveled with a musical production outfit. Here's what he did to make money. At intermission, he sold music so people could take and play. That was, before phonographs and so forth. So that's how and that's what he did between, at intermission time.
Yeah.
But he also worked with Lou Mayer, L.V. Mayer of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer.
Oh, he did.
And he took off in 29 and went to California. And I think he felt he had a lot of people, contacts that he could find a decent job. But eventually, my mother, we lost contact with him. He stopped writing. And my mother passed away from tuberculosis in 1935, January 35. And prior to her death, she asked her minister of the Universalist Church in Towanda, his name was James Herrick, to be our guardian, my brother and me. But he was an older man. He was in his either late 60s or early 70s at the time. And it was too much of a job for him. And he went to the court and asked to be relieved. He was relieved, and they appointed my mother's bank, the Citizens National Bank, to be our guardians. It wasn't a very good arrangement. Every time I wanted a pair of shoes or needed some clothing, I had to go see the president of the bank. And he would send me to a local store to find whatever I needed and bring the bill back so that he could write a check. He was more interested in the finances and not my well-being, although he did sign my papers when I wanted to go in the Navy. So my early childhood, I don't remember an awful lot about, but from the first grade on, I I remember very vividly.
Once the minister turned you over to the bank, where did you live? Did you live?
I still lived at my house. My brother and I lived there until 1939. He decided he was working at they called it silk mill, but they were manufacturing rayon cloth at the time. And it was a small paying job, but we had food on the table anyway. And I was, in my teens, but I could cook. I did most of the cooking at the time, washed my brother and my clothes. So that was early in life to do things like that.
So you and he were unsupervised. You were in that house with no adult?
Basically, yes, basically. And when he enlisted in the Army Air Corps in '39, I went to Boston, where my grandmother, grandfather, aunts and uncles on my father's side always had good relations with them. And I used to go up in the summers and stay with them. Uncle Lou he was a chief electrician for the Loews State and Orpheum Theaters in Boston, but he also had his electrical supply place in Mattapan. So I actually helped in Mattapan. So the electrician come in, he wanted so much BX or whatever it was. I knew how to run the wire measuring machine, and tie it up and bring it out to the counter. It was a good experience. And then I went back home, and I really was in a home, a personal home, where the family had two little boys. They were twins, and very early, maybe 2 years old. And I had room there and paid for it, $5 a week. Well, I had a job in the Newberry's, J.J. Newberry 5 and 10. I was a stock boy. I made $5 a week. Hey, it wasn't very good, but in those days, I was happy to have a job. I had the second job, didn't pay much. At night, from 5 until midnight, I worked at John J. Moore's store. It was a florist shop, soda fountain, and postal telegraph. Well, I only got paid 50 cents a night from 5 o'clock until midnight. But we had this one fellow from the Daily Review that would bring me something to transmit to Associated Press. He'd wait until 11:45 to bring that. Very seldom when he had something for me to send. I never got out of there until 12:30, but I was only paid 50 cents a night from 5 until midnight.
How did you transmit that? What was the methodology, the technology?
Well, I learned Morse code.
So you had to code it, so you started coding early.
Well, sending and receiving, that was just sending. Yeah. And postal telegraph was purchased by Western Union during World War II, but most people never remember postal telegraph.
Sure.
Wasn't as big as Western Union.
Before we go to your service, tell us just a little bit more about your brother and where he served and his name. We didn't get his name.
My brother's name was Hadley Joseph Stone. Where my mother ever got that name, Hadley, Hadley, I have no idea. There's a Hadley, Massachusetts, and whether she ever traveled there when before she was married, I don't really know. But he joined the Army Air Corps and went to Langley Field for his training. And he eventually worked with at Eglin Field with the Doolittle group, but he didn't go on the flight with the Doolittle gang. He was transferred to Michigan to be an instructor in the machine gun school they had there. And he stayed in the Army until the war ended, and he was married, and in Michigan. He got married when he was up there, and he went back to Michigan to live. I forget the different companies he worked for, but he worked for some tire company first in Michigan, and then he worked at, can't remember names of things. That's my problem, remembering names.
That's okay.
But
We're just getting a little information on
he
him.
worked for an automobile manufacturer, Oldsmobile. He worked at Olds and retired from Olds. And he has 3 children. He had a divorce, but I stay in touch with his ex-wife there, and primarily the 2 daughters. The son has a good job he's in sales with an original Olds company, and the company that he works with, I can't remember the name of it, but they make emergency trucks, and they sell them for fire companies and
Sure.
government, for emergency type vehicles. But
What was your wife's name?
I was married to Eleanor Ennis. I met Eleanor when I was in the 6th grade. That was the year my mother passed away, 35. She originally, from 1st grade to the 6th grade, went to the 3rd Ward School in Towanda. I was in the 2nd Ward. Well, after her mother died, she was living with a sister and brother-in-law in the 2nd Ward area. And so she came to the 6th grade, and that's where she sat kitty corner across from me. Oh, this nice-looking girl.
When did you know you were going to marry her?
Had no idea. I did all during our schooling in Towanda. I never had a date with her, but she used to pal around with us like when we went Halloweening. In those days, it was all trick. It never was a treat. And I remember this one year, I said to there was a small group, about 5 or 6 of us, and she was there, and I said, I know this farmer that has, he was a neighbor, and he had a heck of a big garden, and he always had cabbages. So I said, we can go in there, pick up a few of his cabbages, and break the root off and roll them up against people's doors and run. Well, everybody had rolled their cabbage, and it was Eleanor's turn. She hadn't broken the root off yet. I said, Eleanor, it's your turn. And she winds up with that root, crash, right through the front door window. And we ran like heck, to get out of the area. But one of the guys in the group, it was his aunt's house, the broken window. And he told his aunt that I had thrown that cabbage and it was up to me to pay for it. It cost me $5 to repair that window. I never let Elder forget that. But I was home on leave in 1942, and I spotted her on the other side of Main Street. I ran across the street and I said, "Hi, Eleanor." "Oh, hi, Eddie. Where are you now?" I said, "I'm in Philadelphia, the Navy Yard, waiting for a new ship." And I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, I graduated from Martinsburg, Pennsylvania, and high school." And I said, "How big was your class?" She said, "Was only 15 in the graduating class." It was a small school. I said, "Well, what are you doing now?" And she said, I'm working for the Farm Bureau in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania." And I said, "Oh, Harrisburg isn't that far from Philly. Do you think we can get together?" She said, "Why not?" I said, "How about this next weekend?" And the rest is history. So we had a good marriage for 62 years before I lost her. That was in March of 2006. She had a stroke in 98. Well, she smoked cigarettes until, I gave them up in, I think it was January 1960. And I made up my mind. I was watching the TV medical program that was showing these cadavers' lungs with holes in them from smoking and things like that. And I said, "My New Year's resolution is to give up these damn cigarettes." And I was smoking Pall Malls at the time, a little longer cigarettes, and American tobacco put good tobacco in those cigarettes. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, when that ball came down in Times Square on New Year's Day evening, I said to Eleanor, "Here's my cigarettes. If you want to smoke them or throw them away, it's up to you." I gave them up. Cold turkey. Didn't ever want another cigarette. I haven't had one since. And she smoked Chesterfields for a number of years, and I think she got in that habit of smoking Chesterfield, and she used to listen to Glenn Miller when he was advertising for Chesterfield. And well, anyway, her upper lobe, you have 3 lobes in your lungs. On the other side, you have your heart. So I didn't realize at the time that she only had 3 lobes. Well, her upper lobe was damaged, and she had to have an operation to remove it. I had her home after the hospital stay, and on a Saturday morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, she had a stroke. And I said, "I'll call 911. No, Ed," she said, call the doctor. And I said, "It's Saturday. He won't be in. Somebody else will be relieving him, And I want to call 911. "No, don't call the doctors." Well, just to please her, I called the doctor's office. And I got their answering service. And I didn't hear from the doctor that was covering for our physician until 9 o'clock. Now there's 3 hours lost. And when he called, he says, "Get her here as soon as you can," instead of saying, "Call 911 and the medics will be there to help." So I drove her down. The first thing, you have to wait in the waiting room, fill out all the papers and everything. And I said, "She's had a stroke." Nobody in the hospital actually realized that you know, the waiting would be very damaging. Well, she really didn't get to see a doctor until sometime in the afternoon. For her rehabilitation, after she got out of the hospital, she had to go to a nursing facility for rehab. Thank goodness they did pick up a speech therapist, and she learned how to talk again. But her one ear was damaged so badly, when she finally agreed to have a hearing aid, it was much better conversation with her. I didn't have to yell at her, you know. But I took care of her for 8 years. I didn't know how to cook much prior to her time in the hospital. But this is good information for men. She taught me how to cook, and I listened to her. I'm a pretty good cook today. I decided I had this job in J.J. Newberry's, $5 a week, and I had the second job, 50 cents a night, at John J. Moore's. And I also, in '39, I learned how to be a percussionist in high school. I played in band and orchestra. And a local dance band leader, I can't remember his name. You know, we had so much fun together. Why, I can't remember his name, and I have nobody to contact anymore to find out who it was. He used to play for a lot of the high school dances and colleges in the area. And we didn't even have a telephone in those days. But he contacted me through the next door neighbor, had a telephone. So that's how we operate. Today we got phones all over the house, you know. But then we didn't even have a telephone. And he said, I need a drummer for my next gig. And he said, I contacted the high school, and your music instructor suggested I get in touch with you. I said, I don't even have a set of drums. Well, he says, that's okay. He says, I've got this gig in Ithaca, New York at Cornell University. And he said, I was just wondering if you'd be able to go with me if maybe I can make arrangements to have Reggie, which is his regular drummer, loan you his drums to play for me. Would that be satisfactory? And I said, why not? And he had a white dinner jacket that fit me, a black bow tie, and I had to have a pair of shoes and everything, of course, a pair of pants and shoes. But I made $5 that night. It was from 8 until I think we finished about 12:30 in Ithaca. And that was big money.
Yeah, so that was quite an improvement.
Then, maybe it wasn't. A little over a month later, I got another contact from him. He said, would you play for me again? And I said, where are we going this time? He says, to Dushore, Pennsylvania. I said, what's going on down there? He says, it's a Polish wedding. And I said, where is it? He said, at the Rendezvous. I said, hey, I'm only 16 years old. I can't go into a gin mill. He says, don't you worry about it. He says, you're in the band. So I made another $5, but that was an all-night deal. 2 o'clock in the morning, they came to the band and said, we're going to give you a little reprieve. We can rest for a couple hours. we want you back at 4, though. We want to do some more dancing until we go to first mass at 5 o'clock.
Oh boy.
So
So
I was dead, but I made another $5. Hey, in those days, you try in most anything that you
because you're in the
can.
in the Depression at this point, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What were the name of your children? Did you have kids, and what were their names?
Well, Eleanor and I had 4. The oldest boy was born in November 15th of 46. Remember, I was home on leave. She got pregnant in February. So
Okay.
he lives in Kentucky. He's a retired chemical engineer. And in fact, he retired twice from the petroleum industry. And he's there in Lexington, and he's a tutor for athletic students at the University of Kentucky.
What is your son's name?
Robert Edward Stone,
Okay. And what were the names of your other kids?
Janet, Elaine, and she's married and lives in Fayetteville to Dick Harding, and she had 2 children. Oh, by the way, Bob is married to Kathy, and they had 1 daughter, Julie. But Julie, let's see, I have 6 grandsons, but 1 granddaughter, and she has my 3 great-grandkids. There's 2 little girls and a boy.
All right, let's move into the time that before you enlisted. Tell us a little bit about what you were thinking and why you decided to enlist.
That's an excellent question. I had ideas of going in the Navy in 1939 when I got out of high school. I remember my brother and I were living alone, and I had a friend who was an amateur radio operator, and he and his wife would invite me to have supper with him before he went to work at the Towanda Wholesale Company. He'd been an amateur radio operator for a number of years, and he taught me the Morse code. And I got my first license in 1937, actually, through his, he's the one that gave me the test and everything for the federal license that I had. Well, I didn't have an awful lot of money in those days, and I had to eat, and things like that. So my amateur radio was very minimum, at a minimum, you might say. And, got to be able to work for Postal Telegraph. And then when the submarine disaster in '39, the Squalus went down. She was a brand new submarine that went down. That was the first submarine that they used the Bell on, and brought up, I think it was 23 men. The rest of them perished. But that got me interested. And I used to copy in my time of learning Morse code, practice, I used to copy Navy Morse schedules from Naval Radio Washington, NSS, that was its call letters, and also NAA. They were at very low frequency, but they also had high frequency as well. But I thought an awful lot of naval radio. They're the ones that actually helped me, you might say. And I wanted to be, if I went in the Navy, I wanted to be a Navy radioman. Well, after the 2 gigs I had with, you know, he said, you should join the union. I didn't have any money to pay for union dues and things like that, so that I could get more work, you know, in the music business. Well, I gave up on that. I said, what I'm going to do when I graduate from school, from high school, I'm going to see if I can get into the Navy. And it took me several months after graduation to get tests, have tests and things done. But I finally, I think it was around September or October of 1940, I found somebody was going to Elmira, and I rode with them, went to the recruiting station in Elmira, which happened to be a sub-recruiting station for the Navy in Buffalo. And they said that all the training stations were full. In those days, we had Newport, Rhode Island, that I would go to, Norfolk, Virginia, Great Lakes, Illinois, and San Diego, California. Those were the 4 training stations for the Navy. And finally, he said, come back next month. And there were several times I got rides to Elmira, and they kept telling me that the training stations were full. And when I went, and he said, come December the 1st, I went to Elmira, got a ride to Elmira December the 1st, 1940, took all the examinations and passed everything, physical, mental work, and all the school stuff that you had to go through. And I had to get okay from my guardian, which was a bank, a minister or priest, chief of police in your hometown, and one other. I think it was Cecil Kahn that signed me off for. He was the guy that taught me the Morse code. Mm-hmm. Cecil and Naomi were such great people. Never had any of their own children. But when after the war broke out, he enlisted. He didn't even, he was older, 44 at the time, you know? But he became the chief Army radio operator on Guam late in the war.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were great people. And she was a pretty good cook too. That's kind of a cute story to tell about Naomi. Before they were married, she worked for the telephone company in Elmira. And she said, Ed, I was a supervisor and I had roller skates back and forth from the different positions of other operators, you know, plug it in there, plug it in there, you know. But yeah, she had roller skates.
Very efficient.
Yeah, run back and forth. I thought that was a cute story to tell. And,
all right, so you would be 17 when you enlisted because you had to
I
have
was
all that
17,
approval?
right, yeah. And they told me, we have these minority cruises that you can sign up at 17 until you became of age, 21, you either shipped over or went home. So I thought, hey, that's a great deal. So that's what I signed up for. But obviously, the war came during my enlistment period, and I extended my enlistment for 2 more years. Basically, to go back to submarine school. When I went in the Navy in 1940 from Buffalo, I went to Newport, Rhode Island, and well, I'm a little ahead of myself because I wanted to tell this story about, they sent me from Elmira and stayed overnight in the YMCA in Buffalo. Overnight, it rained and froze. When I went up the post office steps in Buffalo, I fell 3 times on the ice. Wonder I didn't break my butt. You know? But I passed all the tests and exams that was given to me. And it was late in the afternoon. They told us, don't bring heavy clothes because you're only going to make $21 a month, and it's expensive to ship your clothing home. All I had was a little golf jacket, and it was freezing. They put us on the train to go to Providence, and everything was white with frost coming through Syracuse. Everything was white. We got to Rome, and we're on a siding in Rome. I wondered what was going on. We had moved for over half to 3/4 of an hour. Finally, the word came. The feed water system from the tender to the engine froze, and they had to send into East Syracuse for a new locomotive and tender to haul us through. We didn't get into Providence till about 3 o'clock in the morning.
So was Providence your first training site, or was it Buffalo? Or did you just report in Buffalo?
Well, we had to go from Buffalo, which was where I was enlisted in Buffalo, to Providence, and then transfer to a bus to take me to Newport, Rhode Island. That's the training station.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was awful cold, but when we got to training station early in the morning, I had my breakfast, and you got initiated immediately. And when you went to dump stuff in the trash can, you know, there was always a guy there would run a handful of garbage up your arm, you know. Then we got the haircut. I don't think I had a hair left on my head, you know. Regulation haircut, you know. And in a training station, I had a chief quartermaster that, well, he had spent quite a bit of time in the Navy, and he was my chief for training. We had an awful lot of guys from Brooklyn and New York City, very streetwise guys, you know. And we had to sleep in hammocks. Those guys would try to jump from one hammock to another, you know, foolish stuff, you know. But I don't think that very many of those guys could pass the good examinations and go to other schools and things. Most all of those fellows from New York City and Brooklyn were sent to the USS North Carolina that was building in Brooklyn at the time. I do remember after I went through submarine training the first time, and I was in Brooklyn waiting for a ship to take me to Pearl Harbor because I was being transferred to Commander Submarine Pacific for further assignment. And I saw one of these guys that was in training station, and he was on the North Carolina, or assigned to the North Carolina. And he said, "Have you had any good food lately? Why don't you come with me, go to home?" He says, "My mother's a great cook." Well, I never had much in the way of Italian food, but when I got over to his house in Brooklyn, his family welcomed me like one of theirs, you know. And oh, so much food, you know, huge platters of food. And well, that was the last time that I saw him. And because it was only a couple days later, I was left Brooklyn and took a train up to, I think it was Peekskill, New York, and to the Iona Island Naval Ammunition Depot, where the USS Pyro was loading ammunition. It was hot. It was in May, I think it was the 20th of May in 1941. And had to carry my bag and hammock, you know, regulation tie-up, you know, about, it was a good half mile, and it was hot, and we were in blues, and I was sweating like crazy, you know, to get aboard the USS Pyro. And I was assigned to the 2nd Division just for transportation, you see. But they put me in the 2nd Division where I had a bunk and a place to store your bag and stuff. And we left the next morning. First port of call was Philadelphia Navy Yard. Overnight, I had a stern watch on the ship.
Describe what stern watch is.
The stern watch was to make sure there was no other ships or submarines or anything that was in the area, or, you know, to prevent any accidents and stuff.
And the Pyro its mission was to carry ammunition, correct?
And personnel, primarily. We always carried officers from one station to another, or ship to another, and they had, you know, special quarters, but we also carried enlisted personnel too. But enlisted personnel really worked aboard ship as, you know, helped the regular personnel aboard. Yeah.
Did you pick up a nickname anywhere along the way, or were?
I just went by Ed.
Ed. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we couldn't have been in Philadelphia Navy Yard more than 4 hours, or 5 maybe at the most, and I had a call to see the executive officer. And I'm wondering, what in the hell did I do that the exec wants to see me? So I went to his office, and he said, Stone, I've been going through your orders and your jacket, and I find you to be an amateur radio operator. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Can you copy the Morse code? I said, yes, sir. Oh, he says, we need radiomen badly on this ship. He said, you go in the radio room, and the chief radioman will give you a sending and receiving test. And he says, if you can pass his test, I'm going to see if I can get your orders changed. And I said, well, Commander, I'm supposed to go to ComSubPac for further assignment. He said, get in that radio room and take that test. Scared the hell out of me. And, well, anyway.
You learned quick, you do what you're told, right?
Yeah. I passed the test, and sure enough, he was from the Naval Academy in either 1916 or 17. And he had one of his classmates there in Philadelphia with the Commandant's office, Com4. And those two guys knew what to do. They got my orders changed, and now I am ship's company aboard the USS Pyro. Next port of call was Norfolk, Virginia. From Norfolk, we went to Guantanamo Bay, and before we got to Guantanamo Bay, all these big ships, battleships, things coming over the horizon. We were asked in the radio room to send a message to Washington, and find out what we should do. As it turned out, it was 3 of our battleships from the Pacific coming around. The New Mexico, Idaho, and Mississippi, with their entourage of destroyers and cruisers to join the Atlantic Fleet. Well, finally we passed and saluted them, you know, with your flags. And we went into Guantanamo. Then we also hit 3 of the Virgin Islands just for a couple hours apiece, because all we had there was machine gun ammunition for the Marines that were in those places. And then we went to Panama, went through the canal, up the west coast of Mexico to San Diego. We were in San Diego July the 4th, 41. Okay, that night we're half loaded with ammunition. They're firing fireworks right over the ship. Hey, that was a dangerous place to be at the time. We were right downtown, the Broadway Pier in San Diego, and they're firing these fireworks right over us. Next day, I think it was, if it wasn't the next day, the next 2 days anyway, we headed for San Pedro.
Did you get any shore leave, any time off?
I think and I bought I went downtown San Diego, and I bought a football because I used to play with football. Hell, I play with them, kicking it, you know, do a little punting and things like that. That was some exercise. Well, anyway, what I wanted to tell you about San Pedro, as we're approaching the bay, here's this huge Japanese man-of-warsman tanker in quarantine, ready to go and take on oil. Well, when we left San Pedro, before leaving San Pedro, we had a couple gunner's mates on board that was in the Asiatic Fleet at the time when they used to do sorties over the Houston. That was the flagship of the Asiatic Fleet. Japanese would, you know, menacing tactics. And then they sunk the Panay in the Yangtze River in 37. These guys said, I wish that the old man, meaning the captain, would have us train our 5-inch guns on that ship and sink it right there in quarantine.
So they were getting their oil from...
They were getting oil from the United States, yeah. I think in those days, any man-of-warsman, if they needed oil, they were given oil. And they also were purchasing an awful lot of petroleum products from the United States at the time until sometime later in July. See, now that was 4th, 5th, 6th, early part of July. But when we got to San Francisco, here's this ship that was loaded with silk that they wouldn't let unload, had to turn around and go back. President Roosevelt had closed all of the assets of the Japanese in the United States at the time. And that's what got the warmongers working on this operation that we went through.
And that cut off the oil as well, which was very vital to the Japanese, correct?
True. Yeah. And then that's when the warmongers got this huge program of conquest, you might call it, set up. We had at the time Army officers, Marine officers, naval officers in Japan. I'm sure that Washington had all the word about this operation that they had planned, not only to annihilate the U.S. Pacific Fleet, but to move into the Philippines and down into Indochina. And they were fighting in China at the time. You know, China was still at civil war, and they were moving in to fight China. And, well, I'm sure that Washington had all the information, but they had the idea, no way could any country do such a big operation. They sure as hell did.
So take us from, you're in San Diego. Where did you?
San
just
Diego
take us-
to San Pedro to San Francisco. And we left from San Francisco and went to Bremerton, Washington. That was where that ship was built. And Naval Ammunition Depot there, and then from there to Hawaii. And
Were you
that was
fully-
in August. That was in August, our first time in Hawaii.
And you were fully loaded and
Fully loaded,
going across
and-
with munitions.
Right, and after discharging all of the ammunition, they had a narrow gauge railway system in Hawaii, and they would put all the projectiles and bag powder and stuff for the battleships on these, well, like box cars, and haul them to the main ammunition, I'll call it ammunition dump, way the hell up in the hills, you know.
When was this? About when did you? In what month was this? That you got
August.
to Pearl? So you got to
August.
Pearl Harbor
Yeah,
in August.
August of 1941, yeah.
Okay. So then, what happens next?
Well, we went back to the States after we discharged the ammunition and took on another load of ammunition in, I can't remember if it was, I think it was at Mare Island, but it could have also been in the Oakland area, and went back and went out on fleet maneuvers. This was just 10 days before the bombing. We got in, we were roaming around with the battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and everything on fleet maneuvers. And we came in Friday afternoon
to Pearl Harbor?
to Pearl on the 5th. And we knew that the next day, Saturday, would be captain's inspection. In those days, if you were in port on Saturday morning, you always had captain's inspection. First, you'd have personnel inspection, then you had materiel inspection. Thank God I stood by the emergency radio generator on the boat deck for captain's inspection Saturday, and he asked me to start it. It was now remember that ship. They laid the keel for it in 1918. It went in commission though 1920, and everything that we had on board was all World War I stuff and old. This was a hand-crank gasoline engine, 4-cylinder engine. You choke it and crank it, it might start and it might not. You know.
And it ran a generator for the radio room?
Yeah, it was, and the generator hooked up for just the radio room, for stuff in the radio room. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but when during the attack, I had a gun position for general quarters. The morning of December the 7th, I had duty in the radio room from 8 until 12. That was my schedule. I had relieved the radioman that had the 4 to 8 watch, and he said the circuits were practically dead. There was only one message, an officer's change of duty that came over the all-nav circuit. Other than that, it was practically dead. So I relieved him at 7:45, and about 10 minutes later, he came running back and he said, "Look at these funny looking planes out here." I ducked my head down from the radio room door. If they were 100 feet off the water banking around, that was high. And it was the torpedo planes going in to drop their torpedoes on Battleship Row. We went in general quarters almost immediately. Apparently, they saw it from topside too. And captain had general quarters ring. And I got relieved by the chief radioman in the radio room, and I went to my gun station. I was a sight setter on an old number 4 5-inch 51 caliber gun. It was an old broadside gun, wouldn't point above 30-degree elevation, so it was no damn good against aircraft, and it was projectile and bag powder, real old stuff. Well, the first attack, see, we had 2 attacks that morning. The first attack was almost over with when I got word over the telephone to secure the 5-inch guns. And after I secured that gun, I was to go to my regular duty station. I just opened the door, and that bomb that missed us by 12 feet went completely through a 6-foot thick concrete dock before it exploded. And I'll tell you where those bombs originated from. But it threw a lot of concrete around on the ship, and nobody actually got hurt, but it certainly jarred the ship badly, and we lost ship's power for a short period. And I was ordered to get that emergency radio generator going. You know, I ran up there, and it's the only thing I had in my mind, get that damn thing going. I choked it, one crank, and it started, because the day before, the captain had me started. And we had juice in the radio room. But that afternoon, I found out what happened. The first lieutenant came by the radio room. He says, "Is Stone in here?" I said, "Yes, sir." "What are you doing?" I said, "Standing by to repel raiders." I had a 30-06. We had word that it was false, but we had word to single up our lines to get ready, and we had steam up ready to leave. And I had the 30-06. If any Japanese was trying to get aboard, I was to kill them. Yeah. Well, they said they were making at Lulule. That was only about 3 miles from where we were tied up. The Japanese were making landings, which was false. But we had to abide by what we heard, and we were standing by. He said, "We'll get somebody to relieve you, take the gun, I want to show you something on the boat deck." Well, what goes through my mind again, what the hell did I do on the boat deck with the first lieutenant, who's in charge of the boats and the hull and everything, and the personnel that takes care of that stuff. And we go up the ladder, and he says, "See all these marks?" He said, "I was on the bridge, and we were being strafed at the time you were running up here to get that emergency radio generator going. And that pilot had you right in his sights." And I was running ahead of all the machine gun fire. I had no idea what the hell it was. I didn't hear it.
What goes through your mind when you're in the midst of all this chaos? Do you remember?
Get that damn generator going. That was
very
amazing.
Focused then.
Yeah, very, very focused. Yeah.
Were you afraid? Did you?
No, not really. I was too young to be afraid, I think. Yeah, yeah. And I had that job to do, and I wanted to get it done. Yeah. Then I went to the back to the radio room. We had juice in the radio room. And, well, some of the personnel. We had through flag hoist and semaphore and blinker, we had all kinds of messages and things coming in. But I could copy light too, blinker with Morse.
And did you have casualties on your vessel that day?
What's that?
Did you have any casualties or injured on that?
We had a gunner. He's an officer. Went up through the ranks, It was an actual, I think he was chief gunner. And loading a 3-inch 50, he cut his thumb in the breech, lost a piece of his thumb, but that was the only injury aboard.
So you had a close call when that torpedo bomb, when that bomb came over the ship.
12
Very
feet.
close,
Yeah,
yeah.
12 feet from the ship, yeah. All right, now let me tell you where they was. I can't remember if it was that night or the next day. We had a boat came alongside, and we must have been out at, they did bring a tug and got us out to a buoy tied up, and they got a torpedo net around us, and they started unloading ammunition. And this boat was from the USS Tennessee, and she had this crate. It was like a, excuse me, it was like a, can I go on now?
Yeah.
It was like a grapefruit crate, flimsy. But it had all these pieces of a bomb that had gone through number 3 turret of the Tennessee. Did not explode. It broke open and burned the guys in the turret. And they brought them to the Pyro to bring back to the Bureau of Ordnance for them to see these pieces. Everybody aboard ship saw this one piece, USN 18, meaning 1918, ORD, Ordnance. They bought legally, after World War I, 14-inch
Surplus?
projectiles that were armor-piercing type only. And they had ideas then they were going to make bombs out of them and bomb our battleships, because that was, the thing to do, I guess, at the time.
Yeah.
The warmongers, it was the army that was running everything in Japan at the time. They were the warmongers.
So the first wave, and then you said there was a second wave. Did they?
The second wave was when we got that bomb.
Okay.
Wait a minute, I'm mixed up. We had secured. It was in the first wave. We had secured the guns, and I ran to my regular duty station, the radio room. That's when that bomb missed us. So it was the first attack.
Right.
The second attack was primarily bombers and strafing by Zeros. And
Were we able to get any of our planes in the air?
yes, but we didn't know, where we were located at Westlock. Pearl Harbor is separated by these different locks. We were in Westlock, where the Naval Ammunition Depot dock was, and the facilities were nice there. It had nice big green lawn. That's where I used to, why I bought a football. I'd go out and I'd kick a football on that lawn. For exercise.
Yeah.
I'd get permission to leave the ship and go out with my football and kick the football around. But I did that during the first part of the war, and then I left that football. I gave it to the guys that were still aboard. And when I came back to the States, I had to take the USS Henderson for transportation to San Diego. And we got to, see, I'm getting mixed up. San Francisco, not San Diego. From Pearl to San Francisco. And at San Francisco, I stayed right in the middle of the bay at the island there, Treasure Island. And they had a big facility there. And some of the best duty I ever had in the Navy, I was put on shore patrol. I was third class petty officer. Petty officer duties at times, you had to do that. You had to be a shore patrol.
So you
But
you came back from right after Pearl in December. You came back to the States.
We left, I think it was the 12th of December for San Francisco and to report to Mare Island. We were only out about 4.5, 5 hours under attack by an enemy submarine. One torpedo went right under our counter stern, you know, where the rudder is, you know, right under that. And as we were turning to avoid the second torpedo, it grazed along the port side of the ship. And we were ordered to send plain language under attack by enemy submarine and then maintain radio silence. Well, it took us a couple days before we got to Farallon Islands, so it's about 20 miles out from the Golden Gate Bridge. And Coast Guard cutter challenged us. And when they got our call letters, N-E-L-K was our call letters. They said, "Can't be, we heard you were sunk." See, we didn't make any transmissions after we sent that message under attack by an enemy submarine. And they had heard that we were sunk.
So how did you convince them you weren't sunk? Just kept.
Well, they said they realized that there had to be a mistake that was made. By here we are. And we went on into port. And the captain called us to quarters, and he said, "You can tell what happened to the bumper, but do not say another word about any of the other ships." Well, one evening, I was on deck watching the other ships, and there was a destroyer, an old four-stacker from World War I. It had 4 stacks, you know, and it had sent a message, and I could read the blinker, to the Argonne, which was the vessel the admirals were riding. And they said they had a submerged contact and requested permission to investigate, and immediately they were given permission to leave. And well, maybe it took 20, 25 minutes later, another message from the destroyer to the Argonne. Definite submarine contact, gave its course, approximate speed, and requested permission to drop ash cans, depth charges. And the longest period of time went by before the admirals sent a message to that ship. And as the ship, you know, was trying to stay put near where he had picked up the submarine, and all you could see was pig sticks sticking up from their masts. They were that far beyond the horizon at the time. It was over 20 miles. And finally, the Argonne had these lights, searchlights, aimed up a cloud so that they could
Bounce it?
converse, down to the destroyer. This is almost verbatim. No friendly submarines expected in area. Suspect them to be friendly and rejoin the van. Do you know what it turned out being? One of those huge Japanese I-boat submarines that was also hauling the two-man submarine.
And this is just before
Yeah,
Pearl
yeah.
Harbor?
Roughly, it was about 10 days before, yeah. So they were spying on fleet maneuvers also, see? Well, things like that
Interesting.
happen.
So you mentioned the lights. Let's digress just a minute. Tell us the procedure for, it's called semaphore, is it? When you
Well,
what- the light-
semaphores with
Flags.
flags. Blinker is with a light, and
Walk us through the procedure. Like, how do you first acknowledge one another, and how does it?
well,
How do you know they're all of a
you
sudden?
may just see a da-da, dot dash, a, and you train you had all, manual training of a light. You train it on where you saw the AA, and you gave them your call letters. And then
you start.
communicate normally,
What's the practical distance on a clear night or day? I don't know. What's the distance that you could actually operate and see each other's signals?
20 miles.
20 miles.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's the maximum.
And you said the horizon is how far?
That's
Just about 20?
20 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but hey, light, you could use had different types of lights, like the big old searchlight that the Argonne used to aim up to a cloud down to the vessel to read.
Interesting.
I think that's a very interesting thing to tell. Prior to Pearl Harbor, there were
signs.
submarine bringing another small submarine in, because we did have two of those small submarines that got into the harbor, and one of them was sunk by one of the destroyers, fairly close, within maybe 1,000 yards from where we were. There was a small two-man submarine. And then there was one that got caught in the screws of the Solus, the hospital ship, Solus. And I don't know how they ever got rid of that submarine that was hooked in their screws. I don't know. But I think that was a submarine that they finally used in a burial where they were pouring concrete. I think it's put in there and pouring concrete and everything right over it.
Okay. So I think where we're at now is you're back in California or on the West Coast. Pick us up from there and where you chronologically were headed next.
After Pearl Harbor.
After Pearl, I believe you said you came back.
Did I
Came
don't
back
know.
to,
Did I tell about leaving Pearl and being under attack?
Yes, you
all
did.
right. Now we're in Mare Island, I believe, and until the Midway battle, we made probably 2 or 3 more transits back and forth
On
to
the Pyro.
Pearl. On the Pyro, and we took from San Francisco all the personnel that went on a big carrier that got sunk, and all those fellows were lost. Torpron 8. We took all the personnel Torpron 8, Torpedo Squadron, that is, 8, that went on, I forget now which carrier it was. But those guys all got killed. But we hauled those guys to Pearl. And let's see, I had taken a test in October of 41 for third-class radioman. I was Seaman second until that day. But I didn't get it awarded until, I think it was April of 42. And then, let's see, August of 42, there's a dispatch that came in requesting a third-class radioman for transfer to new construction. And I was asked if I wanted the transfer, and I agreed. So that's when I left my football to the guys, and I boarded the USS Henderson, which was an old naval transportation vessel that used to haul the Marines back and forth from China and the Philippines, and came into San Francisco. And I think, as I did mention to you, about having one of the best duties I ever had in the service, and I got into Treasure Island. They put me on shore patrol.
Tell us about Shore Patrol.
Well, shore patrol varies. You had to put boots on, you know, boots on your legs, and you had a stick, and officers would have their .45, but enlisted personnel just had a stick, you know, to beat off if you got in trouble. I say stick. It was, you know,
A baton, like a policeman's.
Yeah, I guess you would call them batons. Well, anyway, this was excellent duty. All I did was rode around in either San Francisco or Oakland. One day on, 4 days off. Rode around with a policeman from either city in this patrol car. Excellent duty. No.
So you're just waiting for, you were there in case a sailor got out of line and
Yeah. But thank God.
didn't have much trouble?
I didn't even have to get out of the car. But, you know, we always, I remember having, now maybe you don't want to put this in there, but I got to tell you this story.
No, we want details, so tell us.
One time I was on the bumper, and I had to take shore patrol, and they put me down Hotel Street in Honolulu. That was where all the whorehouses were, you know. I had to stand to keep the guys in line going into the whorehouses.
So they let them go in, but they didn't want any fights.
Yeah.
All right, so you said you were on the Henderson, and that's going to take you to the new build?
Henderson back to San Francisco.
Okay.
And that's when I got on Treasure Island. And I was to wait to be assigned a new ship. It turned out, after I was there for, maybe 2 weeks, I was transferred via train to Philadelphia Navy Yard. And I was to put in commission the USS Bumper. That was the minesweeper that was built in Camden, New Jersey, but went in commission in the Philly Navy Yard. And after mine trials and things like that down in Virginia, they decided that we should go to New London, Connecticut, and operate with the prospective commanding officers school, be a target vessel for them, which we did for a few months.
A target vessel? To explain that.
Well, we knew what submarines we were operating with, and it was training for the prospective commanding officer.
So they were targeting what?
They
Decoys?
they were, fired dummies
Oh, at you?
at us, yeah.
Okay, so
We're
they
the
just had no
target.
explosives in them.
Yeah,
They bounce off the hull or something if they hit you?
yeah. They were loaded with water. They called water slugs. And, but they were regular 21-inch torpedoes, And, well, anyway,
Tell us about how a minesweeper operates. What is the practices and techniques that if you had to do your job in an active minefield? Or,
well, it depended. If you were streaming a cable to explode them,
was the cable
well, heavy, and
Was
there
it
a
between-
great big reel on the stern, and that's the reason why they decided that those ships that they were built on were top heavy, and they finally converted them back to PC boats. That was after I had left the force, USS Force, that happened. But it was sunk in the Solomon Islands. There was a fella from Salve. There was a radioman with me on board, and he stayed on and took that vessel when it became a PC boat, and it went out.
and what was the name of that vessel? The
USS Force,
Force,
F-O-R-C-E,
okay, yep.
AM-99. But it was top heavy with that great big mine cable on the stern. That was one thing that you would stream, with your special mine type of cutting equipment that would cut a cable, and release the mine to float it to the surface. And if it was a live mine, live ammunition, I call it, you would fire a gun at it and explode it that way. We also had depth charges on board, and you did patrol duties, also submarine patrol, and we had sonar on board, as well as other electronic equipment. But it's a small vessel. I can't quite remember, but I think it's only 153 foot long, something like that. It was a relatively small vessel. And, well, before I left that, we were operating with the submarine S-17, and she came up underneath us, a hell of a big hole in our hull, and damn nearly sunk the submarine, and we damn nearly went down too. This was just in the in Long Island Sound, and luckily we got in, and we were repaired in a yard in New London, a yard that used to take care of tugboats and things like that. It was a small enough vessel that they used, a type of equipment to pull us up, out of the water.
right.
And they repaired the vessel. And then that was when I was transferred back to the submarines. And
So the first sub that you were on from there, what was that called? When you were transferred to submarines, what was the name of that vessel?
Well, I can't remember. I think it was a Pike. That was the first one that I was on for short, just a short period of training. And she had come back. She had made a number of war patrols, and it was an older submarine. And I was after more training, like I had to go through sonar training, submarine radio, radar repair, and I was assigned to the USS Bumper to put it in commission.
So radar and sonar were pretty new at that point from a
Yes.
technology standpoint, right?
Well, we had both radar and sonar on the Force, that minesweeper that we had.
How does a submarine, tell us about transmitting in a submarine? Is it, you know, do you have to be on the surface? What is the way that you do this?
Sonar, obviously, you can, if you're on the surface, you could still use your sonar equipment, except topside listening, you'd have to be submerged. But radio, you had to be on the surface to expose an antenna.
So the whole vessel had to be up there, or just enough to get the antenna out?
Well, usually you were all the way up. Yeah.
So once you went underwater, there was no option. You lost all
That's
communications.
right.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah. It didn't have any communication except sonar.
How long would
Sonar, you could still transmit more between vessels.
Oh, okay.
Sonar. Yeah.
So how long would be typical to be underwater? What was the range of time that those subs then could stay underwater?
It all depended on your battery. These are diesel and storage battery type operations, you see. And when the specific gravity of the battery was down to a certain point, you had to come up and on the surface and run your diesels that had the generators to charge the battery. There was 220 cells, and these were big 2-volt cells, about so big, you know, and about 6 foot high. And it took a good period of time to fully charge those batteries too. But as I said, we had 2 battery compartments, 220 cells in each battery compartment.
When you were charging, could this sub be underway at the surface, or was it, okay, so it could motor using the diesel?
Yeah, well, we had 4 main diesel engines, and we called the smaller one Dinky engine, but it could also be used for charging. You may, depending on where you were and the operation, you may be running on 2 engines, you know, on the surface, and use the other 2 for charging batteries. But obviously, when you dove, you had to shut those engines down in a hurry because you'd draw a vacuum in the hull.
Sure.
And one of the main things that I wanted to mention, it wasn't the amount of food that we had. Obviously, if you expended all of your ordnance, it was time to leave patrol. But it was fresh water that we manufactured. That was the limiting thing. In about 60 days, the equipment that would bring in the salt water, the salt amount of salt that, you know, accumulated in those tubes and things, and the only way that you could get rid of that salt and be able to produce enough energy, you know, was to clean them out with acid. And you couldn't do that aboard. You had to be alongside a submarine tender or a dock to do that, to run the acid through.
So it was fresh water was the limiting
Fresh
factor.
water, yes. You got 6% salinity in with sulfuric acid batteries. You generate chlorine gas in a hurry, and you kill everybody on board. So that was a very important part. we always had plenty of food.
How was the food? How
Good.
good?
The best in the Navy.
Right on the
In
subs.
fact, the best in any of the services was the submarine food.
What'd you do to keep busy when you weren't on watch? You're in a sub. What kind of things did you?
Well, they had played cards. We had a little patrol, you know.
Little
like,
player,
yeah, they
long play records?
Yeah, play records. We had a radio that you could listen to broadcasts and stuff like that, you know. Usually high frequency stuff, you know. And but it was a hell of awful good duty. Well, I was busy all the time in the radio room because anytime I could expose an antenna, and I would put out a paper every day. We didn't have any reproduction equipment on board except my typewriter and onion skins carbon copies.
So you would take in news and then you'd type up a.
Type up a newsletter, and can I go on and tell you about?
Sure.
We had gone through Lombok Strait.
And where's that?
Lombok is one of the islands next to Java.
Okay.
We had left Java Sea going into the Indian Ocean.
And you're on the bumper.
On the bumper.
Okay.
We were going through Lombok. We had transited maybe 1 or 2 days through there, and I'm ready to copy KFS, my, it was about 30 words a minute, station, located, of all places, Palo Alto, California. And flash wait for 25 minutes. That's all, it was all in Morse, see. That's all they were saying, flash wait, flash.
What did that mean, flash wait? Just wait,
They
be
meant-
ready?
Yeah, they had news and stuff, but wait. Normally he would come right up on the hour, and he kept sending for 25 minutes this flash wait bit. Finally, here it comes. 13th Army Air Corps drops atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 250,000 people were killed outright. 150 were burned, would probably die. It'd be over 150 years before any human being would be able to go into the area. You know what I thought it was? Our propaganda to get them to capitulate.
But it was the
Stop
real
the
thing.
war. But that was the real thing, but we didn't know. Well, the guys in the after torpedo room, I knew they were gambling back there on baseball games, you know. And every now and then I'd hear from them, they're kidding me. If I couldn't get scores for them, they'd say, Stoney, next patrol, we're going to get a new radio. Well, anyway, I went ahead and published that paper, and I always made sure the old man had a copy he could read. And I was tired. I went back, hit the sack. I don't think I had been asleep more than 10 minutes, and here's a messenger shaking me, waking me. Stoney, come on, get up, get dressed. The old man wants to see you. Get the hell out of here, I'm tired. Come on, get up, he says. I did. I got up, I got dressed. I went in, knocked on the captain's cabin. Come in, sit down. First time ever he was that abrupt with me. Where'd you get this press news? I said, same station I copy every time we're in the area. And he says, no, don't forget. He says, years ago when I was on the USS Chicago, I was a radio officer. How was reception? I said, reception was good. But I had to wait so long before he started sending his traffic. And he looked at me kind of funny, and he said, well, I said, reception was good. I didn't have any atmospherics, but I hadn't waited that long, you know. So he said, "Okay, I'll see you later." It wasn't his way. He was such a nice guy to begin with.
You remember his name?
Joseph W. Williams, Jr. And I went on the way back to my bunk. I went through the maneuver or to the control room, and here's the chief of the boat on the hydraulic manifold that controls all the flood and vent mechanism. And he said, "What do the old man want to see you?" I said, "Goddamn press news." "Oh," he says, "the war's going to be over in a couple days." I said, "How do you know?" And I took off from my bunk. I went back to sleep and got up and had breakfast in the morning. Went in the radio room, checked over any of the traffic that came in overnight. Here's the official dispatch about the bombing from Nimitz. I no sooner finished that dispatch, reading that dispatch, and the radio room door opened. Here comes the old man. He puts his arms around me, gave me a bear hug. He said, "You had me worried last night." I said, "Why, Captain?" He said, "That press news. I thought you had made all that up and I was going to have to survey you, put you in the hospital."
He
Nobody,
thought you were nuts.
yeah, nobody knew anything about atomic energy and stuff like that in those days, except the guys working on the Manhattan Project. You
Yeah.
know. But he always was such a good egg, you know. And his wife, Madeline, she knew that I knew her dad. Her dad was a graduate of the Naval Academy in 1907. Went around the world in Teddy Roosevelt's Great White Fleet. Came into California after the trip, you know, and he wanted to get in the submarine. And back in those days, it was so dangerous to be in those gasoline-powered submarines. You know, excuse me.
They have fire problems. What was the what were the dangers of those early?
Gasoline.
Just too explosive.
Yeah. And well, he stayed in that old submarine service until just before World War I. And they were looking for submarine officers that had, you know, quite a bit of training and existed, you might say, in those submarines. And they made a big offer for him. He had to give up his commission. I think he was a lieutenant at the time. Had to give up his commission to go to work for EB. But we were making submarines for Canada at the time. Couldn't make them for Great Britain, but we knew damn well where they were going. We could make them for a neighbor, you know.
And then they'd go across from Canada
Yeah.
to England, right?
So he and two other fellows were sent to Great Britain to check up on the submarines that went to Canada. And while he's in Great Britain, he gets a cable from EB,
EB stands for
Electric Boat Company.
electric boat.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're now a division of General Dynamics.
Dynamics, I think, yeah.
And while he's there, he gets this cable asking him to go to Russia and meet with Nicholas and see if he could sell him some submarines in the United States. Now, this is before World War I. While he's talking and trying to sell to Nicholas, the Bolshevik Revolution takes place. They grab him and the other guys that went with him, threw him in prison. He was in prison for the rest of World War I. When he got out after the war, he had to walk all the way to Turkey. I forget how long it took him, but can you imagine
That's
that?
a long walk.
And when he got back to the States and saw his family for the first time, they asked him to go back to Paris and set up an office in Paris because EB was making submarines for Spain, and I think maybe Sweden. It may have been one other country, but they wanted him to have an office in Paris and take care of their European operation, you may say. Well, he had a friend that was working in a German U-boat factory that he ran into in Paris, and he was invited to come to Germany and go through his submarine building operation, U-boats. And he had a photographic mind. He never wrote anything down, but it was all upstairs in his brain. And he came back to Paris to his office. He contacted, I guess, just by cable, you know, to EB, and they said, "Get your butt back here, and we want you to go to Congress, and tell Congress what you saw." He did, but it fell on deaf ears, you know, typical. So he goes back to his office in Paris, and one of the first things he found out was that the guy who was his friend and invited him to go through that U-boat factory was executed for it.
Breach of security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was a great man, and EB had, well, I think there was a period of time, I don't know what he did, but I'm sure he was connected with EB some way. And all during World War II, he was the fitting out, well, I guess you had to call him officer, of all the submarines that they built at EB. They built a bunch of them. And, well, when I was assigned to the bumper, one day this was before I went in commission, I'm down on the boat, and we've got two ordinary office, straight-legged office chairs in the radio room. And I'm thinking, hey, we've got to have some place where we can store our cigarettes and candy and stuff. And so I said to the communication officer, I said, do you think we can get these two chairs made into little lockers at the bottom of them so we need more spare part room. He says, get your blues on, go up and see Harold Johnstone. I had no idea who Harold Johnstone was. I get up to where his office was. There's no secretary. He's not there. I'm standing outside. Finally, a guy comes out of the men's room. Hello, Sparky. What can I do for you? I'm looking for Mr. Johnstone. He put his hand out, shook hands with me. What boat are you assigned to? I said, the USS Bumper, or the Bumper. Oh, he says, come on in. I got a big story to tell you. I get in his office, and he said, you're going to have a captain the best in this world. Happens to be my son-in-law. So he said, what can I do for you? And he said, well, it's not in the budget, but give me a couple days. I'll see what I can do for you. Anything for that boat because it was his son-in-law's boat. So I go back down to the submarine. Next day, here's a yard workman wanted the chairs to take up. They made CRS, that's cold rolled steel, lockers out of the bottoms of those chairs. That's what
Good to know, people.
That was our spare parts,
Sure.
Candy and cigarettes, you know.
They were secure.
Yeah. And nice little hasp you could lock up, you know. That was nice too.
All right, let's go back a little bit. We talked a little bit about the yeah, you need a break? Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Let's talk about some other specific battles or places that you had talked about earlier that you haven't got on the tape yet here. I believe you mentioned you were in some other places, and were there other engagements that you participated in?
We left Pearl for our first war patrol and stopped at Saipan. while we're in Saipan, we had to take off the most secret coding machine and put another type on because we were going into, waters that we didn't want. If we were sunk, we didn't want that.
So did
We-
you operate the encoding machine as well? Tell us about the encoding machines.
I don't want to. I'm still, that's secret. I can tell you what it looks like.
Okay, tell us what you
It's
what you feel you can tell
more
about.
like a teletype. It was like a teletype. And you had tapes that would run through it. And it would convert Morse into English language, okay, depending upon how it was set up. The coding machine was a secret.
Where did you get training for that? Was that something you did on land, or were you?
Washington.
Okay.
Washington. There was a place in, I can't remember it was just outside of Washington, but it was still in D.C. Well beyond the Navy Yard.
Did it take a long time? How much time did it take to train?
Very small period, yeah. Very small period. I had that information after we went in commission. I was sent with another fella to school. They called it school. But it was so secret, they had some code name for it. And I was never to explain to anybody how it operated or anything.
So to this day, it will remain a secret.
I
Okay.
maintained my secrecy.
Your oath. I admire you for that. Okay, so tell us about, again, the different places that your ship was assigned and the duties that you were
Well,
assigned
from
to on these.
Saipan, the USS Franklin was in there when we pulled in.
What kind of
Burned-
vessel was the Franklin?
That was an aircraft carrier, burned from stem to stern, but she still was under her own power and came back to the States under her own power.
Was she at Pearl when she got burned? Or this
No,
under
it was
attack?
a newer vessel, built during World War II, and got hit by all these kamikazes. And she was burned from stem to stern, but she could still operate. And we left Saipan for our first patrol area, which turned out to be South China Sea, between Hainan and Formosa. At that time, they were doing bombings on Formosa, and because the Japanese had walked in there too, China and Formosa. What the hell is that called today? They changed the name of Formosa.
Formosa, I don't know.
Well, it's just off the coast, and it's where I want to say the white Chinese transferred, and China wants that back, right today I'm talking about. And I say white Chinese. There's no black Chinese, but what I'm referring to was the political operation that moved into Formosa. I can't think of the name.
Is it Hong Kong?
Huh?
Is it Hong Kong? Or,
No, Hong Kong's a city in China.
Shanghai?
Huh?
Is it Shanghai?
No, that's another city.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just
That's all right.
Can't tell you the name now. But we primarily were being lifeguard operations in case any planes were hit and had to hit the
So,
water.
as they were going to Japan and back, you
Well,
there in case something.
whatever the operation was, you know, bombing operations, and if they got hit and had to go into the water, we would always listen on the frequencies for lifeguard and be there to pick them up. Now,
Did you pick up any, or?
We didn't, but hey, I'll have to tell you this story. Before we went off patrol, another submarine came out, and they were only there one day on patrol and picked up 3 airmen. And they asked us to rendezvous with them, take their personnel off, because we were going off patrol. We would go to, we didn't know at the time where we were going, but where we went was into the Philippines, into Subic Bay for our rest period. And there was a typhoon on, and it was so rough. The waves were 20-some feet high, and we couldn't rendezvous with that ship. So we took over their patrol, and they took their personnel they picked up into the Philippines.
During a typhoon, does a submarine submerge? Does it stay on the surface? What's the best way to?
If you're submerged, you can't help the air, pick up any airmen.
But this, even in a typhoon, they wanted you.
You're on the surface. Yeah. It was rough, but in a submarine, you got so much weight, you know. Well, you didn't roll and pitch as much as a surface vessel.
Did you have any trouble with seasickness?
Did I have
Ever
trouble?
have trouble with seasickness?
No.
No.
No. It's just one of those things. I guess it depends on individuals. Yeah. I know one time when I first went to sea on the Pyro, going through up from Virginia down to Cuba, it was rough, and I felt a little wheezy, but I never upchucked, no. But that was the only time I can remember, except for something that happened, and it was practically a flat surface. We got, and this was after the war, and we were out in Subic Bay, and I got a new radio man then. And as I said, it was practically flat surface, and this guy upchucked. Not did he even pull a wastebasket over and going right in the typewriter.
Ah,
And I had to clean that mess up, and I got sick then. That was not this, you know, any wave operation. It was from that bastard's puke. It ain't in the, I cleaned it out of the typewriter. I had to use the typewriter, you know. And well, it's the only time I was really ever sick from that.
all right. So did you have other duties besides lifeguard duty, or was that the primary mission? What
Well, if there's any ships that come through, we would stock them, you know.
Yeah.
But it was, they were hugging the coast, and they were smaller vessels late in the war. They didn't have any big vessels anymore, except for in the Sea of Japan. And they had that mine so bad. Although late in the war, we had 8 submarines. They had some new special equipment to go through minefields. And they got into the Sea of Japan and sunk a whole bunch of them. We only lost one of those submarines in there.
So they had.
Sea Dog was one of them, and I knew a couple of guys well that was on the Sea Dog in that operation. They, I think, sunk 4 ships when they were in there.
What was the nature of that equipment? Was it electronics, or what was?
Electronic, yeah.
They were able to
electronic,
sense the mines.
I never got involved with that. It was late in the war, you know, and never got. But they were able to go in there, and you could. Well, it was a type of sonar, but I never operated. I didn't know that much about it, except 7 of them got it. Well, the other one was sunk by a destroyer that was in there. It wasn't. She got through the minefields and everything, got in there, but was sunk by a destroyer.
Can a surface ship travel faster than a submarine? Is that,
Usually.
yeah, so they can
Yeah.
pursue the
Well,
submarine?
Destroyers, hell, they
Real
get
fast.
up to about, well, converting knots to miles per hour. Let's say approximately 35 to 40 miles per hour. You know, that's fast.
And your sub would go how fast?
Submarine, maybe 5.
Oh, so they were easy to catch if they were on the surface
Yeah,
then. Yeah.
yeah.
Dangerous
Well,
situation.
yeah. Today, of course, it's a lot different. Atomic powered submarines and things. Yeah.
Did you have any special friendships that during the war, or any that endured after the war?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I had quite a few. I got to tell you this story about Pat Gray. Does that name ring a bell?
No.
When J. Edgar Hoover died, Nixon appointed Pat Gray as the acting director. Pat was my executive officer on the bumper when we put it in commission. We went through Panama, and he comes down with appendicitis that turns into peritonitis almost immediately. And I knew how to find a ship that had a doctor on board, because all we had was a corpsman. And I never thought I'd ever see him again, because 95% of the people that had peritonitis died. We didn't have at that time any we had sulfa drugs, but we didn't have penicillin. You know, you needed antibiotic drugs, you know, to help in that. But we transferred him in a rubber boat to that vessel that I found with a doctor. And we never heard anything during the rest of the war about him, whether he died or what. Well, I'm still in the Navy, and the submarine was in Pearl Harbor in the summer of 46. And I've got gangway watch, topside watch. We were at one of the piers at Subbase. And here comes a USS Cayman, another submarine, breasting in on the other side of the dock. Who's got the con but Pat Gray? And he spotted me, and as soon as the brow went over onto the dock, he bounced across, came over on, put his arms around me, gave me a bear hug. He says the captain on board is down in his cabin. So he goes down. Maybe 25 minutes, half an hour went by. Here's a gunner's mate comes topside, said the captain said for me to come up and relieve you. Why? I got the duty. No, he says, you're going to go ashore. I get down and I get ready, go ashore, and waits. I went ashore with Pat and the captain to the officers' club. I'm the only enlisted man in that officers' club. How in the hell they got me in there is beyond. I never knew how the hell I got back to that submarine that night.
Had a little too much, huh?
Yeah.
So he was pretty grateful that you had found that ship with the doctor on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was pretty close, you might say, to Pat Gray after that, operation. He made a number of our reunions together, and Eleanor and I, even when she was sick, she used to love to go to all of my reunions with me. We had one down in Florida, and he was living at Atlantic Beach, which is right in the Jacksonville area. And I had no idea because this particular place, can I blow
Sure.
my nose? It was started by a couple of admirals, and you had to be a full Navy captain, Marine colonel, or Army colonel to live in that facility. I didn't know whether I could even get in there, you know. But after we approached, geez, I was just waved right on through, and I go to his place, and I'm getting Eleanor out of the car into her wheelchair. And here comes Pat, and he's got a walker with wheels on it. And I said, Pat, what happened to you? Well, he said, Bee has a little flower garden over here, and I was helping her in the flower garden. I tripped over a hoe, and I broke his femur. And he was on rehab, you might say. And anyway, we go in, and I don't know what Eleanor and Bee had. I think they were drinking wine, but he and I had good stuff. You know, had a few drinks, and they wanted us to stay for dinner. And I had already made arrangements with a nephew that lives in Jacksonville, and Eleanor needed, you know, handicap facilities, and we were. I couldn't stay in my nephew's house because they didn't have handicap facilities, and I had a hotel. And they joined us, my nephew and his wife joined us for dinner that night, and then we took off and came north. But, well, there was another guy at the place there that was a Signal Corps colonel. And he was an amateur radio operator, and I had worked him on the air. And he asked me what service I was in. I said, submarine service. And he says, oh, he says, what submarine were you on? And I said, the USS Bumper. Oh, he says, I made a trip on the Bumper. He goes, in 1958, I think it was, they were trying to get the different services acclimated with one another. And he was at the Presidio, the Army facility in San Francisco. And the Bumper had come out of Mare Island from a refit and was at Treasure Island. So he comes over to the Bumper with his group, you know. They had some medical officer that was in charge of his group. And he said, when I got aboard, they sent me to the after torpedo room. He said, 10 minutes later, those guys had me snowed. Well, the next day they came back again. They were going to go to sea. And they're out beyond the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't know where they went, but he said the diving alarm sounded. And he said, I think I had to go change my drawers. But he said we made a few dives. Everyone got better all the time. And after that day, they came back in, and he was really grateful to have the experience, you know. So they were supposed to come back and go to sea the next day again. He's all lined up in the morning, and this doctor that's in charge of the operation said it's been canceled. And he said, why has it been canceled? He says, not enough information that would be good for Army officers or something like that. He said, the most interesting thing that I ever did, I think he said 32 years that he was in the Army, that he did, and they canceled it. So he says, you know how the government operates. But
so you went to a number of reunions. How many reunions have you gone to? Many of them?
Oh, it was on the Bumper. But I used to go to the pyro reunions before. I think after I had retired, I retired in 68. I can't remember, 73 I think was the first reunion that I had. And well, anyway, the first two reunions I went to was in Dubuque, Iowa, And the only thing the elder could say about Dubuque was, hey, don't you remember the Dubuque hams I used to fix? It was a great city at one time for hams.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, anyway, she enjoyed all of the reunions, and she loved Manhattans, and she'd always find some other lady that liked Manhattans, and they were
They're all
friends
set.
for life. you
Yeah.
know.
All right.
Well, anyway, where was it?
So-
We started the bumper reunions in '92 in Indianapolis. We went from the next year to Anaheim, California. Next year was Norfolk, Virginia. Then we went to oh God, Salt Lake City. We finally, these names will come to me. Then from Salt Lake City, we were in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, we went to New London. New London, we went to Kings Bay, Georgia. From there to San Diego. San Diego to St. Louis. St. Louis to Buffalo. Buffalo to Reno. Reno to down in Florida. What the hell is the name of it? Port. I can't think of it. And then, let's see, from there, where the hell did we go? I know we've been.
So you've stayed in touch, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah. Well, I was secretary treasurer of the group for all that time.
Let's jump back a little bit. You told us that you had taken in the message about the end of the war and the bomb. Did you guys celebrate when that happened on board
Well,
ship? Or?
when you see, as we were coming into the Swan River, Prime Minister Attlee was just making the announcement that the war had ended. By the time that we got alongside the subtender with the other submarines and cleaned that boat up, and a relief crew came aboard, we went to we were supposed to have 2 weeks rest period, and we were sent to North Perth to an old wooden hotel called King Edward Hotel. And I think there was 2 buildings separate. They were connected together. You know, you go down to go to the head. You had to go down the hallway. You know, way the hell off. I hope you didn't have to piss your pants. You know, but anyway, it was different. But I wanted to go on a kangaroo shoot, and I made arrangements. They had an organization in Australia called Phyllis Dean Operation, very similar to our USO. They made arrangements for me, and I was palling around then with a Limey sailor, English. He was actually Irish, but in the English Navy, leading stoker on the submarine, His Majesty's submarine, Stubborn. That's his submarine. So I was bumming around with him, doing a little drinking, obviously, you know. And I said, I've made arrangements with the Philistine operation to go up to on a kangaroo shoot. Do you want to go? And he says, yeah, he wanted to go too. So I had a fellow off my submarine that wanted to go with me. And we got on the train and went north to Norwich. We got to Norwich, and the mayor of Norwich and his wife and daughter met us at the station. He's got his gauntlets on, you know, big deal. He said, you fellas are going to be our guests tonight for dinner. Stay at our home, and we're going to take you out to the Wade Ranch in the morning. We went out to Wade's, and I noticed when approaching the building, there was a sign up, Marybah, the name of the place, Marybah. I thought that was odd. And one day I said to Mrs. Wade, I think it was at breakfast, she asked me if I wanted coffee because they normally had tea. I said, oh yeah. She reaches up in her cupboard, takes this bottle of coffee extract. Oh, hey, next day I had tea. I didn't want that crap. But anyway, I asked her, I said, you know, your name for your ranch here is kind of odd. Where did you ever get that name? Oh, she said, when we left Wales, we had a couple of our lambs with us. And when we got to our place here, the lambs had such a merry baa. I had to name it Mary Baa. You know, English humor. Yeah.
So they were treating you pretty good. They considered you Americans
Yeah,
to
but
be.
I didn't see any ruse. Their son was supposed to be our guide. We went out with him, and one of the mornings, I heard him yelling, "Rudung, Rudung, Rudung." We got up there. It had been there for 2 weeks, I guess. Crap, you know.
Yeah.
And well, there was something wrong with him because he couldn't get into the Australian Army medically. I don't know what it was. He was a nice enough person and everything, but there was something. He wanted to get in that service so bad, and he couldn't pass the exam, I guess.
So how long were you in Australia? Just the.
Well, there was 2 weeks, and we had to get out of there by the end of August. We had to get out of there. We left, I think, on August the 30th for Subic Bay. We had to go back to Philippines, stayed there until about the middle of January of '46. And then we came back through Pearl to San Diego, and they said, you got to take leave. So they sent me home, and until I think I went back in May. That was quite a while. I had.
May of '46?
Eleanor got pregnant right away. And, well, then I had to go back to San Diego aboard the bumper, and we left and went to Pearl, spent the summer of '46 in Pearl, operating out of Pearl.
What were your duties? Was it still on patrol of some kind, or?
Basically the same. Being a first-class radioman, I was in charge of everything. And I also had equipment that was supposed to have been taken care of by the electricians on board, but they didn't know anything about tubes, vacuum tubes. They knew what I did, and I got 1MC and 7MC general announcing equipment to take care of, as well as the radio, sonar, radar gear. I had the first microwave on board. Tell you what happened. I'm changing the Maggie in the SG radar, and the waveguide went on up to the antenna, but there was a choke joint there. So you pull it out, you know, and do your repairs, what you had to do internally. Well, I had put a new Maggie in, and I happened to have my hand on right on the choke joint. Jesus, it's hot. And I pulled it back, tried to. I said, I got to try something. There was a seaman that was helped me, young man. I said, get down, see if you can get a frying pan and a couple eggs. Let's see if we can cook a couple eggs here. And he came back and said, all the frying pans were in use, but he brought a couple eggs up. And I set one of the eggs right on that choke joint. It was there maybe a minute, and all of a sudden, pooh! I've got a half-cooked yolk and stuff. Oh, what a mess to clean up. All in this piping and cabling, you know. Oh, Jesus, what a mess. but I had the first microwave. I said, oh, the captain give me help. So I said, I got to get down and get him. So
So it was so the waveguide microwave communication equipment was cooking like a microwave for that egg. Yeah.
Sure, there's heat there. Jeez. Yeah. And I went down, and the captain came up. He said, oh, boy, you did a good job. Don't worry about it. He says, we're going in, and all this stuff is going to be replaced.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to clean it right down to get everything out. But the mess, the big, thick stuff I got out of it. But he was a good egg. Joe was a real good skipper. Yeah. Yeah.
So so your duties there, was that pretty much the end of your service? Is that where we heading
when
next?
we came back to Mare Island for a refit, my enlistment was, we were there in September. If my enlistment had been expended by the 1st of September, I would have been paid off in cash with my terminal leave. They call it terminal leave pay. But since my enlistment went on until November 9th of 46, I had to take my leave. So back home I go. I'm still in the Navy, but I'm on leave. Finally, they sent me my discharge paper from Mare Island on the 9th of November.
Yeah.
And I made arrangements while I was home to go to school in Washington, CREI, which is Capital Radio Engineering Institute. And I was employed by GE there as an engineer, a test engineer for them at Electronics Park. And I was assigned to the old transmitter department.
Yeah.
And I stayed with GE about 3 years. And things happened. I went up very fast in the company. And light military and heavy military were formed. And heavy military was here, and light military was going to be in Utica. And they wanted me to go to Utica and check things out, and they had ideas that they were going to transfer me to Utica. When I got down to see Utica, what a rotten town. No way am I ever going to accept that. So I was doing a lot of work with several other manufacturers, reps at the time, and one of them, Ed Osman, had his office in Rochester. He wanted me to go to work with him. So he said, you'll be able to make a hell of a lot more money than you're doing here at GE. And to prove it, he said, how about you and Elner coming to Rochester Saturday? He says, I can show you paperwork and stuff. I made up my mind after I got to.
And you were selling when you worked for him. What were you selling?
Yeah. Well, our major company that we represent was Allen B. Dumont Laboratories, and we also represented Booton Radio and a number of other companies, and eventually we got Hewlett Packard for their instruments. And well, that was back in the days when Dave Packard and Bill Hewlett knew us all by our first name. That's a big company today, and they're both gone now, but they were great guys.
Sure.
And
So you actually had met those two gentlemen?
oh yeah, they knew us all by our first name. Many drinks and things with them too, you know.
Yeah.
And dinners, oh, you name it. We had some good times. Yeah.
What first of all, as we approach the end, is there any other things you want to talk about that happened during the war? Because we're going to move into the next section of reflections at this point.
Our third war patrol, second war patrol, we went into the Gulf of Siam, and that was very shallow water. But we got our first tanker. It wasn't big. I don't know. I got records upstairs. I would say it was probably 7,000 ton ship, something like that. It wasn't big. And I was asked to be an observer. You didn't get credit for sinking a vessel unless you had pictures, either movie or still picture, or 6 people to sign that you witnessed it. I was the 6th witness on that through periscope. All I could see was fire and smoke, you know. But I signed it. We got the hell out of there just in the nick of time. Jap Betty was out looking for us when we got to deep water.
Betty is a plane?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Bomber.
The Betty bombers, right?
Yeah.
That's what they call them.
Yeah, and we got into deep water, and we ran into a small convoy.
How deep was your sub? How deep could it actually go? Remember the maximum
Well,
depth?
I remember going to 400 feet, but that was beyond depth that
Well-
we should have gone.
What was typical?
I think about 250. 250, somewhere between there and 300. Yeah.
Was the oxygen on the vessel stored, or was it somehow manufactured while you're underwater? Did you compress air and store it, or how'd you?
No, we had green oxygen bottles when we needed to use them for breathing and things like that. But it was primarily just ordinary air, you know. Obviously, when you dove, your engines are down because they're air breathers, and you still had just normal air that you had when you were on the surface.
So,
And eventually, carbon dioxide would build up, and you had to either absorb that with materials, and that was quite an operation. When you were down for long periods of time, there was a hell of a lot of CO2. You had
so
to get
how
rid
did
of
you
it.
know when it was getting dangerous? Did you feel it in your body, or were there meters or indicators?
Well, let's put it this way. Instrumentation for stuff like that was very immature, you might say, at the time. You had to take a lot of guesses. How we absorbed the CO2, we take a bunk, it might be my bunk or somebody's bunk, you know, and we put there was a big sheet of material. Oh, I don't know if it wasn't leather. I forget what the hell it was made of. But plastics and things like that was not, you know, around at that time. But it was there so that we could take the CO2 absorbent material that was in big cans, put it out on that bunk, and you had to start with a big wooden spoon, you know.
It was a liquid.
Spread. Because it would generate a hell of a lot of heat, you know. I think it was maybe even that it was some kind of asbestos, you see, that we put that CO2 on because of the heat from it, you know, absorbing the CO2. Geez, it got hotter than hell.
Yeah.
And but that was done only when you had
When you
were
couldn't
down for
surface.
long periods of time. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was a long period of time? I mean, what was the most you think you could stay under there?
Oh, say maybe 24 hours.
That's it.
Yeah, that was pretty much a limit.
And how long would you have to be on the surface to recharge your batteries and get enough oxygen? What was the minimum time it took to replenish?
Well, I remember one time when we were in battle, that was with that convoy that we were trying to get. And there was an old Japanese destroyer that was leading the convoy. And when we fired a couple of fish at him, and the first one, like, smoke came out of his, he left his convoy. He was getting the hell out of the way. The old man wanted to get the destroyer, see? And he said the first time ever that he had a destroyer run away from him. Usually they,
They
be
come after you?
attacking the submarine, yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
But did I answer your
Yeah,
question?
I think so. I think, did we hit all the major operations, right? Anything else that comes to mind?
No.
Okay.
And while we were in the Java Sea, we also played rural mail carrier, big sacks of mail. I knew of several other submarines that were in the Java Sea at the time. We rendezvoused with them, exchanged mail,
Pony Express.
had 16mm movies. We had a projector on board. We used to see late movies that way, 16mm movies. And, well, hell, all we did was take a sheet, and put up for a screen, and run those movies. There was some of those old, what the hell they call, cowboy type movies, that we had seen time and time and time again.
Yeah.
But, something to do.
Did you communicate with home much? I mean, were there people that
Well,
you wrote like Eleanor? Or?
I wrote to her frequently, and I got a lot of letters from her when we got mail. But there was periods of time that you had to wait for getting mail.
Right.
It's like these guys out on war patrol, and here we are bringing mail to them. They couldn't believe it, That's why I say we played rural mail carrier.
Yeah. What did you miss the most when you were away at sea?
First milk.
Yeah.
And obviously I miss Eleanor. And the food was so good, but certain things like real fresh stuff was always great. When we pulled in there were always apples and stuff, oranges and stuff like that for you. We made ice cream. In fact, because of Henry Johnstone, we had the first Taylor soft ice cream machine on board. Anything that he could get for that submarine, because it was his son-in-law,
You got
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
He was the guy to contact whatever you needed. If he could make arrangement, he'd get it. Right? Just like my lockers I had made out of the chairs,
Did you, when you came back, how did you adjust to civilian life?
Well, I after my discharge, I got a job right away, and I was staying. Eleanor and I were staying with a sister and brother-in-law, her sister and brother-in-law, and in Montrose, Pennsylvania, which is about 20 miles south of Binghamton. And I was working in a local radio repair shop there until I went to school in January.
Did you ever use the VA services when you first got out of the war?
Well, let's see. I know my teeth. I went to in Washington when I was in school. I made arrangements to have my teeth done, checked over and so forth. Turns out it was a dentist who I remember from high school that I went to.
Yeah.
He did a good job for me. And let's see. I never used the VA hospitals. When we bought this house, VA was
That helped you out.
Yeah, help me out. Yeah.
Let's move to
I
the
only paid $10,000 for this house.
pretty good deal. Let's move to what we call the reflections part of the interview, where we want to get your feeling. Bear in mind that the people will view this in the future who may be politicians, younger people that are thinking of joining the service, historians. The Library of Congress will keep this for a long time. So give us your reflection on, number one, how do you think that your service changed or affected your life if you hadn't gone in versus having served your country?
Well, I think it was one of the most important things I ever did in my life. I got a hell of a good education because I served. I think submarine school education was very important, and you learn so much about physics, chemistry, you name it. So when I went to CREI, I primarily wanted to be in radio, and because I grew up with it, you know.
Sure.
And television was coming on, you know. So at CREI is where I got my degree in television engineering. But
How about life lessons? Any particular life lessons that you learned from some of the leaders, the men that were the commanding officers, or just friends and experiences?
well, I told you about Pat Gray, and I think I mentioned some about Joe Williams. But I would say last time I saw Joe Williams, he was a full captain. He was commander when I had him as my commanding officer. But I was on reserve training in 1950. I was aboard the USS Dogfish at the time. He's the guy that put me on the Dogfish. You know the reason? He told me, Ed, I put you on the Dogfish because all these people from Washington were coming aboard, and I wanted them to hear your stories about the bumper. You know? He loved that. He had a personal, after he retired as vice admiral. But after he retired, he had his own little personal boat he called the bumper. But Madeline, his wife, was such a nice lady. After Joe died on the golf course in '86, and had a heart attack and took him. But she used to call me frequently from Escondido, California, where they live. And she'd have me on the phone a half to 3/4 of an hour, just shooting the bull. But she knew I knew her father so well. And one time I said to Madeline, you know, I'd like to write a real story in the Bumper Times. That was my publication I used to put out almost monthly for the group. And she said, Ed, instead of Joe, she says, how about my dad? You knew him. She's the one that got me this going, and she gave me a lot of information too, and I met fellows that worked with Henry. He just said he was such an amazing person. You'd go to his meetings in the morning. He had what he called his chiefs, one person that worked for him that was in charge of each boat, you know. And he'd say things like this. I was on such and such a boat yesterday, and back in the maneuvering room at such and such a frame number, there's a hydraulic line that's not bent properly. I want it replaced. I want it cut and replaced. No paper or pencil, it's all upstairs. You know? They said, going to his meetings like that early in the morning. It was amazing what would come out of that man's head. Yeah, no paper, pencil, all upstairs.
Some amazing people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had, I think, you know, he must have enjoyed, like me or something, because when we went to the commissioning party before the ship went in commission, he found me and the group, you know, how about a drink? So he and I shared a couple drinks together. It's just a wonderful man, yeah.
What message would you like to leave for future generations? And what are your thoughts on war in general?
War is hell. I would hope that we would never have another war after the big one. But we've had many of them still fighting over in Iraq and Mideast there. I don't like it, but we're there. Hopefully we can complete the operation and hopefully it'll be successful. But I just don't like war. Just hope we never have another one, but that's wishful thinking. There's always been wars, there always will be.
Yeah.
Sorry to say that, but it's the truth. And you want my information, and I couldn't change my mind. It's just there. I hate war. I was in one, and I wouldn't want other people to be under the same circumstance. Although I went all the way through World War II and didn't get a scratch, which was great. Look at the number of people that are in the hospitals today with their legs off and arms off and things of that nature. War's hell. And I was a lucky person that had a guardian angel watching over me.
How did the war affect your faith, or did you tell us about that? If it
My faith,
yeah.
my faith is still in God, in Christ. I happen to be an Episcopalian. I was confirmed in 1956 at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, which is no longer. It was sold. But I go to St. John's in Marcellus, and I take Phyllis Hagney, a lady who was married in Wales to George Hagney, and he came to Syracuse. She had 2 daughters, but she has macular degeneration. And when I found out that Phyllis couldn't drive anymore, I said, Phil, let me know wherever you want to go. I'll come over and take you. I take her to church every Sunday that she can go, and then we go to breakfast after. She's been a hell of a nice friend, just like she's like my sister would be. She is actually a sister in Christ
Yeah.
to me. And I have one other. There's 2 ladies that were confirmed with me. Irene Apps and Dick, her husband, still living. Dick was in the big push in Germany. There's a story about him that I tell a lot of people. But George Hagney, Phyllis's husband, was Dick's sergeant in the same outfit. And George found Dick laying in the ditch bleeding to death. He'd been hit. He picked him up, put him over his shoulder, took him back to a first aid station, and I think he thought he was dead. But they brought him around, and what did they do but put him into another operation, another group? Wasn't with George anymore. George didn't know whether he was dead or alive. And in a couple more months, he gets caught by the chairman. He's POW for only about 6 months, I think. And there used to be a place called Bill's Inn in the Valley Plaza there. And Fridays always had excellent fish dinners, you know. And one day, George had a gas station in the plaza. And Phyllis called him one day, George, bring a couple from dinners from Bill's Inn tonight. And he said, okay. So he goes over to Bill's Inn. Who the hell does he spot? But Dick Apps. Dick has an apron on helping his uncle, which is the Bill's Inn. And Apps, he says, Dick said, where the hell did you come from? He grabs his old apron or whatever it was, rips it off, throws it on the ground. He tells his uncle, I quit. And he took off and they went on two. You know, I've never found out how Phyllis got those two dinners. I don't think she ever got. They were on a two.
Yeah.
It's a cute story to
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
about those two guys.
Sure.
But George has been gone for 30, I think it's 37, 38 years now. But I used to trade with him, you know, he'd do work on my car when I need, you know, brakes or things like that done. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, it is pretty much getting to the end here. Is there anything else that you feel we haven't discussed that you'd like to add to the interview?
Well, we've covered a pretty good sized road. And yeah, I think there's one thing.
Okay.
For young fellas, particularly males, although they're accepting an awful lot of females in the Navy, it's a good place to get an education. I would highly suggest some of the high school boys take a good look at joining the Navy, even if it's for 4 years or 6 years, whatever they have to do today.
Just to help them get squared away.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
That's one, you know, you might be a parent, I've been a parent, but there's a lot of things that you don't cover that the service will cover. And I think it makes a better person out of you. And obviously, being a Christian is important. But hey, we've got a lot of other religions, you know. I say my prayers every night. And I try to make it every Sunday to church and other functions that the church has. So I think I'm a pretty good person. That's why you're here.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for sharing your memories with us. And most of all, thank you for your service to our country. We greatly appreciate that.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you guys coming. Yeah.
And one final note that we neglected to mention, the name of the interview is Joseph Massinio. And with that,
Yeah.
that's the end of the interview.
Yeah.
Thank you.